Okay. Okay, it's 10:35. We're good to go, Francisco?
Yes, good to go.
Awesome. So hello, everyone. My name is Allison. I'm going to be the host of Strange Reading, a reference search into the unknown where we talk true crime, unsolved, and paranormal. So my guest here today is actually the reference librarian, Francisco. Hi, Francisco. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a new librarian here. I've been working for a little more than a month, and I can say that I love my job. It's amazing all the stuff you can do for people in a library. I'm very impressed. I will say that. Um, I also like Alison. I am interested also in the unsolved mysteries and solved crimes like that as well. So that's why I decided to be a host today. And I was looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all's contributions to this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good to have you here. So I want to welcome everyone. Before we get started, we do have a little disclaimer. So this topic is going to be about cults, which is a very fascinating subject. Like, honestly, I could have a whole season of it, but we'll see how it goes from here. But yeah, feel free to share any comments, respond to anything we have to say. I do want to give a disclaimer though that Francisco and I are not we're not medical professionals of any way. We're just two people that are just happen to be fascinated by this topic and have done our own research over the years. So as I said before, our topic today is going to be about cults. And we're going to talk about two famous ones and, different stuff like why do people join cults, have a little discussion from there, which you're all more than welcome to participate in. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is show you guys some books we have in the library on cults. So our first book, this one's a bit big. It's going to be on Jim Jones. It's called Raven, The Untold Story of the Reverend Jim Jones and His People. It's by Tim Reiterman. I apologize if I mispronounced that. It's Tim Reiterman. So an interesting thing about this book, not only is it because it's very heavy, this book was written by a journalist that was there when Jonestown happened. He was one of the people that got attacked by Jim Jones' people, which we'll get onto a little later on. And we have two books that are on the fundamentalist, and I stress fundamentalist, Church of Latter-day Saints. It has nothing to do with modern day Latter-day Saints. This is like a broken off sect, the fundamentalist, and unfortunately chose a very radical way of approaching things. So we got these two books. This one is actually this one's actually a biography. And I'll go a little bit more on that soon, but yeah, we have these three books here in our library if you're ever interested in looking them up. So we're going to start with the first cult, and that is going to be Jonestown.
Okay.
So Francisco, what have you heard about before we did this episode? What did you hear the most about this cult? Like, what was the pop cultural references and what have you? Did you hear about this?
I mean, one thing I've heard about it was that the name of it. I did hear the name. I did hear the name of Jim Jones as well. Honestly, I didn't know the specifics of the cult and how it worked, its operations. I did know about the famous Kool-Aid thing. The famous saying, "Oh, he drank the Kool-Aid." I think it came from this, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
That's all my exposure to Jonestown. I haven't really read much about it. I've read about cults in general and how they target people, but I haven't gotten deeply into this cults. Like, there's some exceptions. Maybe you're gonna bring them up later or not, but my exposure to this was extremely superficial, and until now. Now I know more about it, and based on all the reading that you gave me, thanks to that, I know more about it. But yeah, there's more to learn. What do you know about it as well?
So I've done my own little research into it. So Jim Jones, the founder of the People's Temple, was a very interesting character. Like, even on photographs you've seen of him, he had a very specific image he liked to convey to the public. He always wore dark sunglasses, whether it was outdoors, indoors. He had very stark black hair. You know, he had kind of a Johnny Cash aesthetic going on almost.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim Jones is originally from Indiana. He was an American preacher and also a faith healer. So basically, he decided to develop his own form of Christianity that emphasized, you know, racial integration. Like, he was all about, you know, promote racial equality. Honestly, the reason why he had such a strong following was because, you know, he gave off this air that he really cared about the inequality going on in the United States from the 50s to the 70s. Which is another thing too. The People's Temple was around for quite a while, 50s into the 70s. And so he gave that, and I do need to stress, he really gave that air that he genuinely cared, and that's what drew people in. I can't say for sure if he 100% believed it, because the fact of the matter is he was all about racial inequality supposedly, but he also promoted himself as the number one in his own group. So take that as you will. So he drew a lot of people, and, like, you know, he would be the one cleaning his own church and everything. So a lot of people had a really good image of him, that, you know, that he cared, that he was willing to do the work. So he managed to convince people in the 1970s actually to come with him to Guyana, which is a South American country. It's near Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
He convinced them to have their own commune there because the racial inequalities in the United States, you know, were so bad. In fact, I think he actually took advantage of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination to try to, you know, to the next few years he created that settlement to convince people by the 70s to come on by. So when he went to Guyana, and in Guyana, the settlement was in a very remote jungle, like miles away from cities and whatnot. It was very hot because it's South America. You know, people were making their own stuff, their own buildings and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I guess to start with, his mental health started unraveling. It was by the time they went to Guyana that the higher ups that were with him realized that he had an addiction to pharmaceutical drugs, and he would claim ridiculous things. Like, another thing too was he would have relations with some of the members, and he claimed that he was the only true heterosexual man on the planet, and he would, you know, have relations with both the men and women of the People's Temple to try to correct their ways, so to speak. And I mean, we could spend all day just trying to, like, focus on that, but yeah, that would take us here all day. So a lot of people. So this takes us back. Now, back in the United States, California, there was this congressman, Leo Ryan. So Leo Ryan was a very big-time activist kind of politician. Like, I read somewhere that he went undercover one time to check on the conditions of a prison. Like, he pretended to be a prisoner. Mm-hmm. And he was reached out by some constituents saying, like, hey, I have relatives in Guyana in Jonestown. I think they're being held against their will. Can you come and check it out? And he said yes. Now, before we get started, for what I just told you, Francisco, what's your take so far on Jim Jones, the character?
I mean, he sounds obviously like a very narcissistic person, and again, I'm not a mental health professional. I can't diagnose people. I mean, anything I say may or may not be valid, but he does sound very narcissistic. Like, he he craves validation from people. Like you mentioned, he wants to convey this image. He will wear the sunglasses, and he had this fake persona that he wanted to project to others to do something, and not only that, but he wanted to project this image that he was this very caring guy that was for civil rights and whatnot, when that was all just a ploy. Um, so when it comes to narcissism, it doesn't just have to be about achievements or material belongings. It doesn't just have to be about that. It could just be moral narcissism, that you think yourself as being better than others just because you do the right thing. When no, you shouldn't see yourself like that. It's expected of all of us to do the right thing, right? But no, they see it like, well, I'm better than everyone else, so therefore you have to follow me. And they have this very twisted logic on things, and they do these very wrong things to kind of maintain this image, and that's how they call it its form. I think that's what happened here. They saw this guy, this cool guy with the dark glasses that cares about civil rights, so let's follow him. Yeah. So that's my take on the character so far.
So Congressman Leah Ryan. So before we get started, I should mention too that they lived in a remote jungle, the settlement, and the only thing that was really close by, but was still like miles off, was a dirt airstrip. So Congressman Ryan, his aide, and some relatives and journalists, relatives of the temple members, came down, and they were taken to Jonestown. And it was there that they had a couple of people that told them straight up, like, "Hey, I wanna leave. This place isn't it for me." And and Jim Jones had said, like, fine. He said it was fine, but we all know that under that statement, when someone says it's fine, it's not fine. So when the Congressman Ryan and the others went to the airstrip, Jim Jones had sent some of his followers to go over, and he ended up starting a shootout. There was a shootout, and there were 5 deaths, including Congressman Ryan, and there were 11 injured. So yeah, you could take that. He was threatened by the fact that some people wanted to go with them. And Congressman Ryan's aide, Jackie Spires, became a politician her own right, and she and Ryan's daughter meet every year on the anniversary of his death to commemorate him, because all in all, he was just trying to reunite some family members and what have you. Okay, so after the airstrip attack, Jim Jones truly unraveled by then. And this is where drinking the Kool-Aid comes in, although I need to stress out 2 things about the drinking the Kool-Aid. One, it was not a Kool-Aid, it was actually Flavor Aid laced with cyanide. And 2, a lot of survivors of Jonestown have a lot of issues when people use sipping the Kool-Aid, because from what they described, they were like, it was not a mass suicide, it was a mass murder. So he told his members, there were around 900, that they needed to commit suicide because the Guyanese military was going to come and take their children. And but the thing is, though, Jim Jones had set up some guards around the settlement that had crossbows and rifles, so people could not escape. So really, they were held against their own will. And there were later found markings on the bodies that showed that they were being injected with a poison rather than drinking straight from it. So a total of 909 people died within the settlement. There were 33 survivors, and 304 children ages 0 to 17 had passed away, So according to sources such as Rolling Stone, before 9/11, the Jonestown massacre killed the largest number of American civilians in a non-natural event. Like, when this came out, it really came as it fell down on everyone, like, oh my God, that happened. I do have to warn you too, if you do look up, if you do look up Jonestown, unfortunately, some places have photographs of the victims and their bodies. So I do want to warn people about that. And 45%, this was supposed to be a racially integrated society. So a huge amount of them were African-American women, like 45%. So all in all, it's very horrific. And Jim Jones had now his method was different. See, he had committed suicide, but unlike his followers, he chose to shoot himself. What's your take on that, Francisco, that he chose a different method compared to his followers?
The same thing. I mean, that just goes on. I mean, if everything else was not enough, I think that's like the ultimate proof that this guy is very self-centered. Mm-hmm. He chose to take away his own life in the least harmful way, and he forced everyone else to do it in a very painful and traumatic way for those who survived. I mean, it just goes on to show how self-centered this guy is, for real. It just, you don't need anything else. It speaks for itself. I think saying it is redundant even. It's obvious.
Definitely.
The thing speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm. And like I said before, one of the journalists that was a victim of the shooting in the airstrip, he wrote this book that's in the McAllen Public Library. Like I said before, it's called Raven, The Untold Story of the Reverend Jim Jones and His People. And he has a very interesting account on that. And I'm also going to put here below. So the San Diego State University, their library, actually set up a little website that has all the testimonials from the survivors, has has all the information, all the members that they possibly could. And Jim Jones' son, Stephen Jones, who has disavowed him and, was never really on his side. He was always against what Jim Jones was doing. Like, he saw through him, even as a young kid, like, you're fake, you're a charlatan. So yeah, he's written some testimonials, some of his own opinions through this website. So it's down below. It's going to be the San Diego State University, and the address is jonestown.sdsu.edu. So next call we have, this one's more recent. This one is called NXIVM. And I think all of y'all started hearing this around the news around 2018, 2019. So it's a multi-level marketing company. It was founded in Albany, New York, well, near there. It had chapters across Canada, United States, Mexico. It basically offered seminars on professional and personal development. It claimed to get rid of psychological and emotional barriers in order to gain more self-fulfillment. So, according to the New York Times, most participants took some workshops, like the group's executive success programs, and resumed their lives. But other people have become more drawn deeply into NXIVM, giving up careers, friends, and families to become followers of its leader, Keith, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, Keith Rainier, who is known within the group as Vanguard. What's your take on that?
It's just the same. You can see a pattern already. It's always targeting people's vulnerabilities in some way. There's always this one guy that is supposed to be the vanguard, the one guy that everyone should follow. It's a true guy. It's the same self-centeredness, the same narcissistic tendencies. It's all apparent on there at this point. It's once you hear about one cult, it's easy to spot the pattern for all the other cults because they all follow a pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like Keith Rainier, he was kind of like foil to Jim Jones, which we'll get into later, but he also carried the same characteristics. So basically this whole thing was framed as a women's empowerment thing. And honestly, I think what helped it to become a big thing in the news was because some famous people were involved with it. There was this heiress for forgot which company that was involved. And there were two actresses from that show Smallville that was big in the 2000s that were in it. Alison Mack, and I'm really annoyed that she and I share the same first name. So Alison Mack and Kristen Crook. Though Kristen Crook did leave later when things started getting way too. She was like, "This does not feel right. I'm out." So several women came forward about the cult in the New York Times. They told New York Times that they were being branded with a cauterizing pen against their will. This was supposed to be their entrance to a secret NXIVM set. They were branded near their bikini lines with the branding of Rainier's initials. He had originally recruited 8 women within NXIVM's ranks to join the secret society. The women that he recruited for his inner circle saw him as their master, and they eventually came to view themselves as masters as they recruited more women to be their quote-unquote slaves. This is according to prosecution. Alison Mack actually became his second in command. So multiple women were testified and saying that they were misled about the group, and they were expected to have relations with Rainier, send him nude photographs, and allow themselves to be branded. Another thing that really stood out to me was that they were told that they could only eat off 800 calories a day, which according to nutritionists, it's supposed to be 2,000 calories. So, he was claiming that this was supposed to mark character and self-discipline. I always thought it was just, no, you just have a specific aesthetic you want these girls to have because you think they're your possessions. I mean, that's my own personal theory, but
yeah.
So he maintained a roster of 15 to 20 of these women, and he ordered them not to be involved with other people. So when the story broke, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn launched an investigation, and Rainier fled to Mexico, and he with some female followers, and he got arrested. So as of June 19, 2019, Rainier was found guilty in sex trafficking, forced labor, etc. He's waiting to be sentenced, and he's likely going to be given 15 years to life. Now with what's going on this year, it might be held off a bit, but I think a lot of people still want to see this man, to pay for his actions. Mm-hmm. So right away, I see some different foils, like with Jim Jones. He used religion, but with this one, he used self-improvement talk. Multi-level marketing is becoming a very big thing, and we're probably going to see more cults from MLMs rather than religions. That's my own little theory. That we're going to probably see more go that direction. What's your take?
Yeah, there's going to be more of those. I don't think the religious ones are going to die away. I think they're going to remain for a while because humans have these, the religious not going to disappear. And by that, I mean also religious cults are also not going to go away. But you're right that there's going to be an increase on the, the self-improvement kind of thing, which a lot of people are seeking nowadays for their benefit. And these people are going to prey on that vulnerability and that need to self-improve. And so people need to be careful and with these groups that they're joining. And I mean, I think that the next topic was the red flags for how to tell if an organization was a cult.
Oh yeah, definitely. So feel free everyone to comment with your own thoughts on why people join cults, and we can just have a little discussion and whatnot. So I found a very interesting article at Refinery 29 by Sarah Coughlin. And here are a couple of the traits she says you have to spot out when joining an organization. So here's the red flags. The first red flag is when they try to rush you into joining instead of letting you process anything. They want you to go in because once you go in, it's going to be harder for you to get out.
Mhm.
Now, another second point she makes is that, that if the leader says they're a higher power rather than the messenger for this higher power, that's when you should, keep your eyes out and see how they talk about themselves.
Mhm.
A lot of these cult leaders love to mark themselves as the martyrs. Jim Jones, I was reading, would try to claim that he was part Black or part Native American in his heritage, which according to like a lot of reports and historians are like, no, he was 100% European. Like, but he would try to do that, like, see, I'm one of you, kind of way.
Yeah, very manipulative.
Mm-hmm. Another red flag is they're going to set up a follower for you that's a mentor. So this mentor is not only going to tell you what to do within the organization, they'll tell you what you have to do in your home life, in your privacy, like, oh, you can't dress this way. Oh, you can't do it. And they want you to do that immediately.
Mhm.
And the last red flag is public shaming. That is a really big factor. Cult leaders do not want you to trust each other. They want you to like try to look at each other and say like, oh yeah, you're doing this wrong. Because if you guys build that trust,
Mhm.
because it's easier to have them not trust each other than to have them as a group be in agreement together, because that's easier for them to rebel against the leader.
Mhm.
Like, what are your own takes on, like, what do you think people join cults?
I mean, I think all of those are reasons why people join cults. Another one, and I think this is not itself a red flag from the cults themselves, but something to really consider, to be careful, is know yourself. I think knowing your own vulnerabilities and what triggers you, what insecurities you have, and what flaws you have as a person is very important, because these individuals target that.
Yeah.
They create these goals to appeal to people with certain insecurities or certain issues. So knowing them is very, very important. And most people don't want to know about their insecurities or their flaws because it's an ego thing. So they kind of push them under the rug, but they're still there. They're still having an influence in what you do. So I think know yourself. It's one of the first things you should do to prevent yourself from joining one of these organizations. And as long as you know yourself, you're gonna know. Once you're targeted by one of these, or once you see something like this, you should stop and think, well, is this something that is truly gonna benefit me? I mean, I have this issue. Maybe maybe I shouldn't join because this is directly appealing to my emotions. Instead, I think that if you're having any insecurities or something like that, the best thing to do and the most wise advice that one can give you is ask help from a professional. That's the number one thing you should do once you identify problems in yourself. Go with a professional. Don't join the cults. Don't. It's better to go with someone who is a professional, with a mental health professional or a counselor, or someone who is qualified to deal with these things. These groups are not,
Yeah.
they're not going to do anything for you.
Yeah, and Grace has a pretty good point with sense of belonging. I think as humans, we have this innate sense of, like, I mean, throughout high school too, you're like, I want to join this club, or like in university, you're like, let me check what clubs there are out here. I think there is an innate sense of belonging too, and I think what's really important too is that, the first impression people give you in these organizations, these cults, they're going to be as nice as possible to you, because they want you to be in their group. And I'm not saying don't distrust anyone that's nice to you, but I am saying like, just because someone's nice to you does not mean they have the best. They have the best. They want the best for you, so to speak.
And that same vein that you mentioned, the niceness, that leads that's part of the reason why people find it very difficult to leave these cults, because first impressions last. So the first impression you get from these cults when you see them is that they're very nice to you, they're very caring, very welcoming, and we're all brothers, and we're all together on this. So that first impression is going to last with you for a while. And even if you have all this contradictory evidence that they're not as welcoming and as nice and as caring as you thought, that first impression is still gonna exert some influence on you and your decisions, because first impressions are very strong. So that's something also to keep in mind. Now that you mentioned that they're gonna be very nice, so you're gonna have this lasting impression that, well, they're nice. They you start giving them second chances. Well, maybe they're going through a bad day, or maybe there's a crisis in here. Maybe I can help somehow, or maybe I did something wrong, or you start giving them the benefit of the doubt, and you give them that inch, and they're gonna take a mile for that. So
Oh,
yeah.
I think, these are master manipulators. And I think that's something you can never, ever forget.
Yeah.
So our next thing we want to cover is some recommended documentaries on cults. So if you go into Canopy, let me see if I can share real quick. Let me see. So on Canopy, I hope my screen sharing is okay. It's probably not working right now, but if you go to Canopy through the McAllen Library, you're going to be allowed to watch, you're allowed to have 8 credits, so you can watch 8 things on Canopy per month. And I really recommend you guys check out Beyond Our Ken. So it's Beyond Our KEN. So it talks about this company. It's kind of similar to Nexium. It's an Australian company. So while they were fighting a court case, they allowed filmmakers to come in and see what they're about. So to read the description, Kenja's leader, Ken Dyers, allows himself to be interrogated by the filmmakers in frank and lengthy interviews, and is exposed in a disturbing finale with tragic consequences. So basically, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I really recommend you guys check this out on your own. I also have another recommendation. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Jonestown, Paradise Lost. And honestly, we could have had a whole episode about Jonestown. There were so many things going on in Jonestown that you would not believe, before and after as well. And the reenactments, I'm not saying they're bad, but I feel like with Jim Jones, he's a very hard character to portray. And the actor does do his best. But, I feel like some of the dialogue can be a little awkward, but it's still a good source. And they actually have Stephen Jones, Jim Jones' son, like I said before. He's actually being interviewed, and he has some really, really good perspective on his father. Like, I feel like out of everyone, like, he has like the best take on him. Like, he doesn't hold any bars back. He doesn't hold back on his contempt for this man, and my heart goes out to him.
Yeah, say likewise.
Yeah, have you seen anything related to cults that you find interesting, Frank?
Not from this list specifically, but I've seen videos from people who know about cults, that they take ideas from different books. They're divulging them to the public so that people, beware. That's all my exposure about cults. I've heard about other cults that are more on the religious, mystical side of it, but that's a very huge area that I would like to get into as well. But I don't have any specific recommendations at the moment. But of course, I can, as I research into this, I can give more recommendations. Then, do you have any others as well that are not in this specific list?
Sure. Actually, I think I can share the screen right now. Let me see. So this is the documentary I'm talking about, Beyond Our Ken. Like, check it out. It's gotten great reviews and everything. So go ahead on Canopy and you can check it out.
Okay.
So now that there, so the last thing I want to recommend before we go is some podcasts. So we have the first one is called Dear Franklin Jones, and basically it's a producer, a television producer, Jonathan Hirsch. So he had so he grew up with where his family were followers of this spiritual leader called Franklin Jones. So to quote the summary, to Jonathan's parents, Franklin Jones was a god, but to the people outside the group, Jones was a cult leader. Now Jonathan is going back, trying to find out what happened and whether the group really did become a cult. The next one is Cult Talk with Erin Martin. So Erin Martin was born in a cult. So she's obsessed now with learning more about cults from people who know them best, survivors. So basically it takes you inside ex-cult member stories, one group at a time, one survivor at a time. Cult Talk, a conversation, non-investigation. The last podcast I recommend is Heaven's Gate. So in 1997, 39 people took their own lives in an apparent mass suicide. The events captivated the media and had people across the planet asking the same question, why? 20 years later, those who lost loved ones and those who still believe tell their story. So those are some recommendations. If any of y'all have any recommendations for anything to do with cults, feel free to share them in the comments.
Yep.
But yeah, this has been a pretty interesting discussion. I mean, I hate saying this, but I feel like there are going to be some more we're probably going to hear about over the years. Probably ones we won't even know about right now, but that are still going on, and it's frightening. But I think as long as we're careful, and then we talk. Go on.
As long as people are aware of those red flags we talked about, and also I think developing critical thinking skills is crucial in this to prevent this from happening, and also knowing yourself, like I said before, knowing yourself and developing critical thinking skills, being skeptical, not incredulous, but skeptical, doubting things, questioning things. That's what's going to keep you, or is going to prevent a lot of harm being done. I think.
Definitely. I feel like we kind of live in. I kind of feel we all grew up where, like, as a kid, you're told to shush if you want to ask so many questions, like, why are we doing this? Why does it have to be that way? I kind of feel like kind of gets squashed out of us when we're young. And I think we still need to keep that intact as we grow older, because it has a way of saving yourself. That's my own take on that. But anyway, so we're wrapping up right now. If anyone has any comments, so this is the first episode of Strange Readings, and we're going to do different types of topics. They don't always have to be about true crime or like unsolved mysteries. They could also be on the paranormal. I've heard that we have very interesting stuff in the Rio Grande Valley in regards to aliens. That could be something worth talking about. But feel free to put in comments of your own thoughts and what topics you want us to grapple. Thank you again so much, Frank, for joining.
No, thanks to you. It's an honor being here.
Yes, I loved hearing your takes, and thank you guys so much for watching us. This is our first episode, so we're gonna try. Yeah, I'm gonna try to keep things as smooth as possible. And I want to thank you for our first attempt at this. So anyway, everyone, take care and have a great day.
Take care. Thank you.